Hi, I'm Tammy Mittal, founder of Real Flow Yoga, and I've put together this Well-Womb Woman course for people that are interested in basically gaining a deeper understanding of what womb wisdom and the blood mysteries really are. So it's actually becoming more prolific within our yoga communities and within well-being culture at the moment to talk about womb wisdom. And if it's something that's caught your attention and you found yourself here, then I'm a real believer in divine timing. And I think this is this kind of means that you're about to embark on an incredible journey inward that's going to create the seeds of incredible transformation that are likely to heal not just yourself, but your kind of ancestry and also the generations coming through you as well. Maybe not just on a familial sense, but whoever you are going to come into contact with are going to feel the benefits, really, because essentially when we look into the womb, we realize that it's the microcosm of the entire macrocosmic universal womb that we all find ourselves in. Gaia, the great mother, is holding us all in this womb space. And so when we look to heal the womb and connect to the womb, we're essentially healing that primal connection to our own existence. So yeah, the journey inward is far reaching, and I'm so happy to welcome you into this budding journey. So let me start by introducing myself a little bit and my background and the evolution of the course and how Well-Womb Woman teacher training has come about. And from there, I'd like to just go through some of the things, the aims, the intentions, the objectives of and the learning outcomes of the course, not just on a personal development level, but on a professional development level, so that you know what you're getting yourself in for, and what you're going to be getting out of the course. Now, of course, it's the journey that's important and not necessarily the outcomes, but at the same time, it's nice to kind of map the two. And maybe you could come back to this introduction video when you've got through all of the material and see, how far you've come, and see whether the learning outcomes have been embodied, integrated, and met. So all right. So here we are. My name's Tammy Mittal. Yes, I've told you that. And I started my yoga practice when I was 14. That was back in the 90s. Now, I know it's not that common actually to have been a teenager practicing yoga then, but it was introduced to me through my mother, and something in the practice really captivated me, and I found myself in states of being that were so transcendent, something like in a state unlike any other. And that's what kept me going. I really enjoyed practicing yoga at that age, and I trained as a yoga teacher at 23. So yoga for me has always been part and parcel of my identity and how I walk in this world. I actually started my periods around a similar age. So I'm pretty sure I just turned 14. I was quite late to start my period. Felt like I had PMT for the first year. But yeah, it's interesting how for me, starting my period and starting my yoga practice actually was at they coincided. So yeah, I actually also have always had irregular cycles. And I joke about having PMT for 2 years before I started, but actually, yeah, PMT has been something that's been a bit of a regularity for me. And it occurred to me over the years that I've actually got polycystic ovaries, and I kind of came to that realization when I was around 29, edging on 30. I was at the peak of my teaching career, the most busy I'd ever been, and teaching up to 25 classes a week. And of course, there's all the admin and all the strategy and the retreats and workshops, as well as the regular classes around that. So I was at the brink of burnout, really, because I was running around the entirety of London teaching yoga. And at that age, I was also practicing a very physically demanding type of yoga and style. So I was really pushing my body into its extreme. I was pushing my energy levels and my working to capacity, really. And my body let me know that this was not okay. And I was also at this point reaching an age of broodiness where I actually wanted to have a baby. I could feel it coming. So I was kind of stopped in my tracks at this point, with the rude awakening that my menstrual cycle is super dysfunctional. I'm either going through bouts of really scanty bleeding or really heavy bleeding, and everything in between. The color, the texture, the consistency, all alarming. And it's at the point now, because I want to be fertile, where I can no longer just brush it under the carpet, and I actually have to pay attention. Why is it like this? So my yoga career is doing this, my menstrual cycle is doing this. There's a huge disconnect between these two aspects of my being, right? Very much identified with myself as a yoga teacher, and very disidentified with me as a menstruating lady. So the two at odds with each other. There wasn't much space. This is like, 2010, oh my gosh, I can't think how long ago. It was about 8 to 10 years ago, in London. And the yoga scene was quite different to how it is now, right? So now there's a real movement into feminine approaches to yoga. But actually at the time, I was in the backdrop of a yoga scene that was very much Ashtanga orientated, yang practices, with a lot of yin yoga too. But actually within the yin and the yang, the yin didn't offer that much space for the feminine either, because you're there holding yin poses for quite a long time. And I don't, it's not, there's a little bit of yang within that yin. And so for me, actually, how I practiced naturally was more of a feminine, forgiving, yielding approach. And I found that this was probably most conducive to getting me back in touch with my cycles. How I practiced yoga was at odds with how the rest of the yoga community practiced, really. My style wasn't that popular. As a teacher, I had to amend and adapt to kind of go with what was popular. So I'd be teaching Jivamukti and Ashtanga and Yin and restorative and those sort of lineages and styles that were actually from traditions that were traditionally like historically patriarchal. So there wasn't that scope and space for a feminine approach. Amongst that sea and that community of yoga styles, I did find a couple of teachers which were also orientated in that feminine approach. And these were Uma Dimsor Tuli, who I did my pregnancy yoga teacher training 10 years prior, and also Shiva Ray, who was my regular teacher, who wherever I went to California to train with her, and she'd come to England every year and I'd train with her. So thankfully I had these two female teachers that were very feminine orientated, and they were the ones that sort of helped guide me into and gave me the permission to practice in a way that suited my body. And having done Uma Dimsor Thuli's Yoni Shakti training and Shiva Ray's sort of embodied feminine trainings, this further bolstered my my understanding and my orientation into that feminine approach and flow approach to yoga, which allowed me to acknowledge that I'm in a female body, to acknowledge that there's times where I need to rest, times where certain poses aren't appropriate, and to basically recognize that productivity and action isn't always the best and the most appropriate way of being in the world. And actually, there's a certain seasonality to it. And when I started to slow down my lifestyle, cut down my classes, cut down my teaching schedule, build in more windows for rest, when I started to allow my body to flow more, when I kind of gave myself permission and authority to teach authentically how I practice, which was this flow approach, then that alignment with my lifestyle and my teaching allowed me to bring together and bridge the gap between my identity as a yoga teacher and my menstrual cycle. And I started to find that my menstrual cycle started to become healthier and less dysregulated, and my teaching voice became more authentic. And when the two came together, that's when I became pregnant. And I started teaching a lot more pregnancy yoga, and that evolved into postnatal yoga when I had my son. And actually, when I was postpartum and I had my baby, my first child, that's when I was my most productive and most successful, and I created Real Flow Yoga as a training school. So even amidst all my fears and anxieties around being unproductive, when a mother is going to make me lose my identity, I'm going to no longer have time, my career is going to fail, actually becoming a mother and embarking on that journey and further attunement and alignment to the natural feminine cycle, that actually gave me the huge inspiration and creative drive to become the most productive that I have ever been. So it's a wonderful teaching and lesson in itself of how that sort of re-examination of what it means to create alignment in your life, and how that and create productivity. Yeah, so my journey into the womb was very much a journey into reclaiming my identity as a female embodied yoga practitioner and teacher. For me, they're all hand in hand. And that's how the womb course evolved out of that, actually. So I started to come across more and more women in my trainings. So people would come and train with me as yoga teachers, and they'd fall pregnant. I had like 3 women fall pregnant in the first teacher training that I ran. And some women just after that training fell pregnant. And I'd have mothers on the training courses as well, bringing their babies. And then in the second course, again, more women pregnant, more women babies, and or falling pregnant shortly after the course. The pregnancy courses were taking off, and there was the demand for the postpartum trainings, and it just made sense. Like, hang on, there's also this womb rhythm that needs to be addressed for the women that aren't necessarily in the baby creating phase, but they still have that creativity, and I want to hold a space for them. And also the wonderful elders, the women older than me that inspired me, that supported me, that nurtured me on my path. I had huge reverence and respect for my students and graduates and peers and colleagues who were older than me and talking to me about menopause and things. So I was like, yeah, this is the way forward. The womb course is going to bridge that gap and create that sort of completion in this in the trilogy of where you could be, or in the life cycle. And so delving deeper and deeper into these topics, you realize, wow, this is just the beginning. There's so much potency within the kernels of the teachings. And we've got this Bible here, Yoni Shakti. If you can get a copy of it now, I think it's out of print, sadly, but this is my Bible, and you can get it digitally online. And of course, you can check in with Uma. She's still teaching loads. But really, I would say that the Real Flow Yoga Well Womb Woman course, not only is it a culmination of my practice and teaching experience over the years, it's very much inspired by Yoni Shakti and my undertaking of Uma's trainings and teachings. I found her courses incredible, but at the same time they're so big, and there's like 80 women on a course, that your voice is a little bit you're kind of just one of the many droplets there, so you don't have that personal one-to-one connection so much, or ability to have that Q&A. So I wanted to create smaller containers where each women's story is heard, and you have a more proactive and personalized approach to your training. And I also wanted to synthesize the material, assimilate it, make it more digestible, make it more bite-sized, make it more real and relatable, because there's a lot of terminology and language in here that's a little bit etheric, a little bit technical, a little bit heavy. So yeah, I just wanted to make it more accessible. So that's the direction that I've gone with this course, and hopefully you will really find that you can take little snippets from here and incorporate it into how you teach already, to make your own style and ethos and approach, to make it to give it your own spin. So really that's the idea. We each are our own authorities of the feminine approach to yoga, and it's about honoring the inner teacher, and that's the crystallization of what these teachings really are. Yeah, so I say this should be like the springboard where you start your journey perhaps, and then you go on and go deeper inward and outward with these teachings. And when you're coming to this, perhaps you're already a yoga teacher and you're looking for that specialism as a womb teacher, that's great. But also this course is accessible for anyone that honors the womb space, whether they've had a hysterectomy or whether they are born of the male gender but just still want to honor the womb space. This course is for all of us. It's for all of us to that are open and willing to acknowledge and honor the divine feminine in any of those manifestations that it arises in. So it's not a course that's exclusive. In fact, the more inclusive it is, the more feminine and womb-based it is, right? So if you're coming at this solely from a personal development perspective, you're going to gain loads from it as well. You don't have to necessarily go on to share. However, I'd always encourage you to. When I first started out as a yoga teacher, I did my first training, I had no intention of teaching yoga. I just turned up. I wanted just some time to myself. And I remember telling that attesting on the course that I'm not going to teach, but I did. And there's something about sharing onward and teaching. It further integrates your own healing and awakening. So you never know, leave that door open ajar. So yeah, you'll find that the spirals into self-development, personal development, and professional development, they kind of greet each other and spiral back out. So yeah, it's just about being open to that and trusting yourself and trusting the process. So learning outcomes by the end of the course. On a personal level, I really hope that you will have explored an intimate and loving relationship with your womb, or with that feminine, divine feminine, and that sort of yoni sthana, that womb space. I hope that you will have explored the unique patterns and cycles within menstruality, perhaps your own, perhaps your, the archetypal patterns within the menstrual cycle, and looking at the very stages within the life cycle of a female. So we have the menarche in the maiden years, the sexuality years, the mother years, the midwife years, the matriarchal years. Like, we've got this natural arc to our lives, and how we can embody each of those archetypes throughout our life, welcoming in our power at the different stages, recognizing the wonderful transitions as we're moving through, and rather than fighting them, flowing with them. I'd love for you to explore throughout this course your intuitive and loving connection between the heart and the womb space. So recognizing how the two work beautifully together. The two are both seats of intuition and power. So when we link the two, anything's possible. They're portals, multi-dimensional portals, where we can experience oneness and sense of self on many different layers. So also we're going to be looking at the role of women and the feminine within contemporary yoga community, but also within the history and the philosophy. So across cultural settings and historical time spans, we'll explore the subtle arts of practice. So those elements of a yoga class that perhaps get left to the end, or tagged on, actually we're going to make more space for those subtle arts: meditation, mudra, nidra, mantra. These things that get perhaps overlooked, we're going to start to see the real juiciness and magic that can be breathed into those techniques, and really give them the space that they deserve. And then we'll look at also the patriarchy and the wider and societal implications of a womb-based yoga practice, and also the potential future impact on the collective consciousness, and also planetary well-being. So yeah, like I say, the microcosm to the macrocosm. This is a spiral inward to that spiral outward. If you think of a coil, when you make it small, there's all that potential energy before it springs out. And as we do that in our body, we come out and do that into the world. So these are potent practices that we're working with on a physical level, on an energetic level, but also on a consciousness level. So if we're talking about professional development and coming out as a teacher specializing in womb well-being, my intentions for this course and for you is that you should feel confident to really appreciate and understand your value and your ability to share these teachings onward, and to appreciate the various stages and seasons of a woman's life, and how different yoga practices and tools and techniques can be relevant and significant and appropriate for different phases and stages and cycles. So you'll be able to cherry pick the right teaching for the right context, and also to know and have an awareness around the safety guidelines and the precautions, and to know confidently which practices are not suitable. So having a real sort of intuitive, common sense understanding of this is going to be really helpful. And being able to relate that to whether a woman is pregnant, perimenopausal, whether she's lactating, whether she's ovulating, all of these different phases, when she's postmenopausal, you know. I'd love for you to be able to competently and confidently teach accessible and effective womb-based classes that kind of target specific demographics. So looking at teaching young teens, or holding a postnatal class, or a perimenopausal class, and knowing what tools and techniques fit best for those demographics, and having an element of community around those classes that you hold. So facilitating and holding space and inviting a friendly, welcoming atmosphere that gives rise to conversation, and breaking down taboos, and bringing in humor, and bringing in, you know, comfort levels, so that we can really break out from the constricted norms that like a linear regular yoga class can sometimes create. Sometimes the regular yoga classes can be awkward and a little bit stagnant, because we've got this sort of structure and layout with the teacher in front, and this hierarchy, teacher in front, everyone listening to every word of the teacher, and everyone in lines. Whereas actually, you know, in this womb-based approach, it's more of a co-created space, and we take a circle format, and we honor ourselves as the primary inner teacher when we come as students. So yeah, it's a whole shift in ethos, and for you to kind of guide that process takes a little bit of conviction and confidence, and I really, you know, trust that this course will provide you that. So we want to also have a good grounding in anatomy. So here throughout the course you'll get insights and understandings of the biomechanics and functional anatomy of the female anatomy, in particular female reproductive health, the menstrual cycle, looking at the hormone profile, and looking actually at the microbiome and the gut, and how that has an influence on female hormones, and then that has an influence on the female chakras and the chakras in general, how it has an effect on the nervous system. Yeah, it's incredible once you start looking at it. There's so much that starts, all those bits of the puzzle that are all fragmented, they start coming in together and forming a more of a holistic picture of female well-being, when you start to look at the anatomy and actually honor the anatomy, rather than go with an alignment that is quite masculine as traditionally imposed. So yeah, also I love on a teaching and facilitating level that by the end of the course you have a good understanding of the subtle energy body and those subtle arts of mudra, nidra, mantra, sound, vibration, you know, and bringing them in and making the class really therapeutic by offering those subtle arts. Of course, it goes without saying, when you practice like this, when you teach like this, what you're offering is a student-focused approach that is adaptive and flow state, because that is really the ethos of Real Flow Yoga, right? We're working on everything from a flow state approach to yoga. So yeah, and then on the end of this, and as part of this, part of your integration and going inward and coming back out, part of the course is really going into the business know-how and having that conviction and confidence to then, you know, launch and create a lifestyle and a livelihood from your specialism, from your niche. You know, you've invested money in this course, you've invested time, you've invested probably your blood, yeah, your sweat and your tears into this course, menstrual blood. Not the other kind. So, you know, what I want from you is to be able to like take that out into the world and spread onwards and share with other women these teachings. So you know, you're going to hit the ground running. And yeah, that's my final kind of aspiration in terms of outcome for this course and your learning trajectory. So that's an introduction. Thank you for taking the time, and thank you for finding me in this course. And I really hope that it becomes a journey that is really fruitful for you. All right, with love.